Um, my name is Alexander Stubbs. I'm with George Norris. It's the 21st of February 2025, and we're at George's house on Gordon Street in Hull for the project Seen But Not Heard. George, let's start at the beginning. Tell me about when and where you were born.
So I was born in Linney Street, which is the street opposite Hull Royal Infirmary. Lived there till the age of 4. Then we moved to Redburn Street, which was all back-to-back houses in West Hull, HU3. From there, they got compulsory purchased when I was 11, and we moved into Sefton Street. And the week we moved in there, Elvis Presley died, so that was memorable. And it was the first time we had an indoor bath. Since then, I've lived Gordon Street. I bought this house, what we're in now, in 1990. But I had it rented out for years, so I've lived down Sharp Street, I've lived in the Old Town in Phoenix House, I've lived up Beverley Road, I've lived down Victoria Avenue, and I moved back to this house 5 years ago. So I've gone full circle, but predominantly West Hull.
So lots of houses. Tell me about that first house on Linney Street.
So Linney Street was a grand house. It was like Cotton Street, big Victorian houses. Today they wouldn't have demolished it because they just needed bathrooms. But I was born in 1964, and it was a big 6-bedroom house, and it was as a kid it was majestic. Even though we moved to a smaller house not many years after I was born. Redburn Street was 7 Pleasant Terrace, and at the bottom of our terrace was a bomb building from the Second World War. We lived there, like I said, till I was 11. Or was it 13? 13 maybe, yeah, 13. And we moved from there to Sefton Street, and it was 1,500 quid for the house. My mum paid 1,500 for this house. It wanted work done on it, but they did it up in no time. And then eventually, I lived there till I was 27. Sounds old for moving out of your own home, but I worked away on the gas rigs and the oil rigs. So I went away for periods of time, 2 on, 2 off. My brothers and sisters had moved out. I was the only man at home. My dad had moved out. So that was good. So it was like a hotel really, and I was close to my mum, so I just used to do my own thing. I'd come home, and it was later that I got into photography through living there and looking through my mum's pictures and stuff like that, because I come from a family of scrap dealers and traditional recyclers in Hull. So my dad started work when he was 13. I started work when I was 13, to be honest, working at my Aunt Norris fruit shop, taking orders, delivery orders to people on Hessel Road, and that was pocket money for the weekend, which was good. So yeah, it was good learning experience, meeting people and earning pocket money.
What kind of place would you say these were when you were growing up? What was the area like?
Growing up, everybody was in the same boat. We never thought of poverty, or we was all well fed. We was always well clothed. Mum used to go to Marks and Spencer's, get all our stuff, because the nature of my dad being a rag and bone man, you think we'd be getting all our stuff off the horse and cart, but it never happened that way. My mum was real proud, and she got us dressed well. The schools weren't great, looking back, because you reflect as you get older. There was training for factory work, really. Even though I went to technical schools, I think there'd been technical schools well before I attended. So I went to Chiltern Street School, primary. My junior school was Francis Askew, and my senior school was Riley High School, all boys schools throughout. Left school at 16. Not a lot of prospects, to be honest. I did a YTS working in an electrical shop in town, Wick Falls, selling electrical products for 6 months. It was a cheap scheme, it was a government scheme, just to get you off the dole. So I then got a horse and cart off my dad, and I did that till I was 20, about 20. After that, I did other government type schemes, loads of little jobs working in garages and stuff like that. And then I was working on a cemetery, School Courts Lane, and my friend was working away at Budgie, so he'd worked away. This is why I did try it, so I did my survival certificate, and my mum came to the cemetery and said, "You've got an interview with this job," so I jumped at the chance because I was only on not a great deal of money working for the council. So I went offshore for 6 years, catering, and then I had 5 years off. In that time, I did a BTEC in Performing Arts at the Raleigh Art School, so that was funny, going full circle. Did a BTEC in lighting, sound, acting, how to put on a show. I left there and worked at the New Theatre for a couple of years. It was really well paid, but it was seasonal. So then I just started thinking how to get a job that's going to pay properly. So I went back offshore again. Went back on the rigs for 15 years, maybe longer. And that was 2 on, 2 off, 3 on, 3 off. Did that for all them years. Really loved it. In the meantime, my daughter was born, Theodora, who was now 28. And then at the end of all this, I'd had enough. The job was killing me, so I decided to give it up basically. Took a bit of redundancy, left, and pursued my photography passions full on, whereas before it was only part time, but now I could really do it full on. So the first job after leaving the rigs, like I said, my dad started work at 13. I thought it'd be a good time to document him now in his later years. He was 80 at that time, and I was getting on towards 60, about 57, 58. So I documented him and his day-to-day business, recycling, meeting all the people he'd met, his friends. It was really good bonding experience for both of us. And then he retired at 82, and then since then luckily I've had funding from the Arts Council and people like that to continue with photography and had some good exhibitions, and that's what I'm doing now.
What did you mentioned what your dad did, what did your mum do when you were growing up?
So my mum works she was trained to be a secretary, but most of her working life was at Smith and Nephews on Ezra Road, big pharmaceutical company making plasters and Nivea sun cream and stuff like that. So she did that, and then she was bringing us 4 children up in between that. So I've got, like I say, brother John, sister Joanne and sister Julie. Julie lives down in Eastbourne. She'd worked for the Guinness Trust, had some good jobs. My brother worked for Citizen Advice Bureau. He does a lot of welfare work now for ex-fishermen. And we lost my sister at 45. She was a housewife with 2 kids. So, yeah, they've all done all right, my family, really. They've really got into the work ethic. That's what was brought up on, you know what I mean, graft.
What was, you mentioned a brother John working with ex-fishermen. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
So my brother John, 2 years younger than me, he worked for Citizen Advice Bureau voluntarily for years. Then he got a full-time job, and then that job came to an end, and then he works now for a charity called Nautilus. Nautilus basically is a charity for anybody who's been to sea, the Merchant Navy, fishermen, people who've been to the Falklands, the widows of fishermen. So, for instance, if you needed a new bed, or if you needed to bury somebody, or you needed to move home and you needed expenses to help you do that, my brother, if it's available, the funding, he looks into them avenues and he gets money to help people either relocate or help people who've got disability problems. So his experience working for Citizen Advice Bureau on welfare has really helped him in this new job. So he's sort of self-employed, but he does work for a bigger organisation called Nautilus, which is a fisherman's charity. And he's done that for probably 10 years now. And he really likes it. It's really a rewarding job. Because you see the help that you can help people with. So, like I said, they need mobility scooters, they need taxis for doctor's appointments, they need a new mattress because they've got bad backs, stuff like that. It's real good work, I think.
You mentioned your mum working at Smith and Nephews. What was that like growing up? Can you remember any stories?
Yeah, I can actually. So Smith and Nephews been a real socialist outfit, brilliant to work for. Really cared and looked after the staff every year without fail. And summer they'd put on bus trips to Scarborough to see people like Mike Yarwood, Cilla Black, and then Lord Charles, he was a ventriloquist. And we'd go on these outings with all the other families who worked at Smith and Nephews. And then at Christmas, they had a big Christmas party for all the family employees for Smith and Nephews. So that was one of the highlights of the year, really. It was two things to look forward to. And like I said, they really looked after the staff and the children as well, yeah. Good people.
What were those trips to Scarborough like?
Just mad. So it was loads of kids, full of fizzy pop, full of A numbers, bouncing about on the bus, having fun. And then you had to behave yourself because you was with your parents. But you got to the Bridleton Spa where the acts were. We'd seen Lena Zavaroni and all these 70s type people. And like I say, Lord Charles, because I loved ventriloquism. I had a ventriloquist when I was a kid and didn't have any mates. So it was fun to watch. And Mike Yarwood, he was the big impersonator of the day, and he was top of his game when we got to see him. So it was all paid for. I think the families must have put some money into a kitty or something like that, but I think it was subsidised by Smith and Nephews. But yeah, happy days growing up, yeah. A lot of families in Westhill, that was the big employer round here, and it still is, I suppose.
Do you remember your mum's interests outside of work?
Smoking. She liked smoking, did Barbara. She loved shopping, loved Marks and Spencer's. They knew her personally in there because she'd be there every single day in the sales rack. She'd come home, she'd show us all what she was wearing, what do you think of this? And if we just had any faces that didn't approve, she'd take it back the next day and she'd change it for something else. And she'd embarrass you if you went shopping with her. You'd be at one end of the shop and she'd be at the other end of the shop. And she'd shout, "Are you there, George?" And I think, God, please don't. But yeah, like I say, she was well loved in Smith and Nephews, and they all speak about the staff who I see now. They still talk about. She loved holiday. She loved holiday. She did a lot of holiday making with my sister, Julie. Loved Spain. She had to have the most goldenest tan ever coming back with the duty-free cigarettes. Even when she died, she had about 2,000 cigarettes behind the grandfather clock. And then if she didn't bring them back, she'd ask people who she worked with to bring a case of 200 back, you know what I mean? But no, she wasn't a drinker, but she did like her clothes. She loved getting nice clothes. And like I say, my sister didn't have any kids. She'd take my mum away every year to Spain or Barcelona or wherever. So that was her treat. She'd have her nails done, she'd have her hair done, and then she'd just blather herself in sun lotion and come back brown as the ace of spades. Or black as.
Your dad, you mentioned, was a rag and bone man.
Yeah.
What was that like?
So, I come from a generation of scrap dealers. So my dad's got 6 brothers. He's the last one living now, my dad. He had horses from the age of 14. Before him, my granddad had horses because he was in the fruit trade around Humber Street. So they would ply their carts full of fruit, my granddad. Travel up to Withensea with my grandma. Sell fruit on the streets, then come back to Hull, replenish the cart and sell fruit that way. then as they got older, they had second-hand shops. So my grandma would go to Gilbert Bateson's and buy stuff from the auctions. Rents was real cheap for shops back then. So then the brothers came along. My grandma didn't want her sons to go to sea because of the dangers. So they all sort of fell into having horse and carts and collecting scrap. It was just after the war. My dad was born in 1940. He was married in 1958. So my mum, Barbara Norris. So that's all we'd known all our growing up years, being around horses and all the stuff that people threw out. So I have a passion for antiques and love of vintage, and I think that's where it stems from. And like I said, my dad's 84 now, and it was only 2 years ago he had 40 horses on Allaby Common, and he's had to sell them because he can't physically do his physical job. So at the moment there's 12 horses on Allaby Common, but they don't belong to my dad. But he's always been a grafter, and his passion's horses, always loved his horses. He'd breed horses, that's why he accumulated 40, because I think he had 8 mares. Well, you can imagine if you have a foal every year, it doesn't take long before you've got 40 mares and foals. But yeah, everybody knows my dad in the city, well loved by everybody that way. Because I suppose if somebody's shouting down your street every day for the best part of 65 years, they get to know him, don't they? Do you know what I mean? Or the ragman's here, and then he's a likeable person, and as he's got older, this is what's the problem with my dad at the moment. He's not seen as many people as he did back then, do you know what I mean? So he's lost his purpose and his way a bit, really. But yeah, talk to anybody on Edsel Road about the Norrises, and they're well known.
What do you remember of him telling you about his start in the rag and bone trade?
So what started my dad off, so you can imagine it's just after the war. He was born in 1940, so it was 2 years, no it wasn't so old, whatever. After the war, he got to 13 and there's 6 boys in the house, so there would have been a lot of money. So he started collecting cardboard, and he'd sell that on the way, and he managed to save up enough money to buy his first horse and cart. And then since then he's had hundreds of horses, lots of carts, lots of harness. Then as time went on, he got a transit, he passed his driving test, and then he used to go in a transit van. He always had lots of different people working for him, just on daily wages and stuff. And what I like about my dad is he didn't know what he was going to earn that day. Some weeks he wouldn't make anything, but then it was all on his own abilities of being out there every day, shouting, asking and grafting. And winter months out of fun to be shouting your head off on a winter's morning, and still got a family to feed. So I must have had a lot of hardships. We never saw it, like, because we never went without food or clothing and stuff. We was all well fed. We've been lucky that way, do you know what I mean? Whereas a lot of the people that I grew up with, their dads just go to sea, and there was always money coming in, because even if they had a bad trip, they still had money coming in. But there wasn't a lot of work in Hull, so I suppose him being a recycler and his brothers having second-hand shops and recycling, it was the days before vintage and charity shops, really. So they've all been resilient. My grandparents was resilient. And it was before all this internet and the media and stuff like that. I think people communicated more back then, do you know what I mean? Not going on a nostalgia trip, but I'm just thinking it was different times, wasn't it?
You what do you remember of those horses?
So I had a couple of 2 or 3. I had Rags, I had Bella, I had Violet. Some was broken good, some was broken not so good. So what I mean by that is horses are very temperamental, so if there's a big noise or a big wagon, or there's even a cast iron sink in the middle of the road, they can shy away from them, and it can be quite scary. So you have to have your wits about you at all times, because you could soon have an accident. But I really loved the freedom of that, even though it was only for a few years. I could see my dad stuck at it forever, because it's just you and the elements, and you was out there in the fresh air, seeing people, and like I say, I really enjoyed it. And I was lucky, I was living at home, whatever I earned was mine, and probably then you could earn £100 a week, when I think the average wage in Hull was probably about 50 quid, and you didn't have to work all week for that. But then you did have your down weeks where you were struggling to make ends meet, so you'd have to save a bit for them weeks when you did have a poor week. But I did like it, especially in the summer. They want a job better, really.
Do you remember what your dad's interests were outside of
Horses, drinking. My dad's interest, drinking, having a deal with other people. If he had a deal, what I mean by that is he'd buy a set of harness, and if he could make a profit, if he bought a car, he could make profit. If he bought a horse, he could make profit. Or if he got something while out calling, collecting scrap, he might get antiques, he might get old furniture. If he could have a deal, he was happy. And he's still like it now. If he can have a deal a day or a deal a week, it makes his week. Other interests, he wasn't really one for cinema. He wasn't bothered about sport. He likes to dress well. I think he's a people's person, so as much as he was in the pub a lot of his dealings were done in the pub. And it was before 24-hour drinking, so there'd be certain pubs like the Gillett Street Club where you could go at 12 o'clock till 4 o'clock, then he'd go on for his tea, and if he wanted to go back out at 7, there was plenty of places. But I never saw him drunk, even though he could drink £10. I think he just drank, and he never got drunk, really. But it was a culture, the man's culture back then was about drinking. It was a drinking culture, whereas when we've grown up, our culture was going to see bands at the Wally Club. It was going to Romeo's under 18s, it was Wally's, it was gigs, it was, and then the ecstasy and the ease, and the raves came later, which I wasn't a part of. That was a younger generation from me. I always liked going to see bands. I followed bands for years. Every time I came home, I'd try and get to see a band from the rigs. But my dad, no, it didn't really have a lot of interest. Like I say, it come from a generation, when he was 20, I suppose, in the early 60s, he used to go rock and roll dancing and stuff like that. There was a couple of places. There was Love Deluxe, which sounds amazing, as the name of a club. And he used to go, Earl de Grey was one of the drinking haunts, Vauxhall, the Alexander pub on Ezel Road, Gillett Street Club later. And then towards the end, he hadn't drank for 12 or 14 years now. He used to go in the Rugby Tavern, which I think they call it Tiger's Lair now, on the Annaby Road there. He used to like going in there just to see friends, really. He's a sociable guy, so he liked being around people. He used to sing in the pub. He was a regular singer in the pub. He had a good voice for singing, like.
Do you remember seeing him sing in the pub?
Yeah, a few times. So we'd go to Appleby Horse Fair every year, and he would sing in the pubs. He'd sing really old songs, what probably his grandparents sang. To Be a Barrow Boy was one of them. My grandma used to sing in the pub. Her big number was, what was it called? That'll come to me. My Yiddish Mama or something like that. Really old song. My granddad used to sing a bit. You hear these stories about people sat around pianos and singing after pubs and clubs, and I think it was that generation was like that. They'd gone through the war years, they want a lot of money about, get a crate of ale, go back to somebody's house, sit around the fire, put the music, singing on, and they made their own entertainment. It's before TV really came into force, really, like it is now. But yeah, my dad was My Way, Wandering Star, things like that. He'd entertain. He was a bit of a showman, like my dad. I think that's just how he is. Not all the brothers was like that, but my dad was like that. He was a bit of a showman, yeah.
You mentioned grandma and your grand. Tell us about.
So all I really know about my grandma and my granddad really, they had fruit shops, like I said. I lost my granddad when I was 13, my grandma later. So she used to go to William Booth House, which every Thursday they used to have a jumble sale, let's call it a jumble sale because it was a jumble sale, and all the clothes from the neighbourhood that people didn't want would be sold on that Thursday, and she'd buy fair coats, she'd buy granddad shirts, she'd buy the flares, suits, she bought loads of suits, and people, she'd have them hung all over the house, and people would come, oh, go to Annie Norris's, I need a new suit. So they'd go in the front room down Williamson Street, try the suits on, even if they didn't fit, she'd make sure they walked out with a suit, you know what I mean? She'd pinch the back, say, oh yeah, it's a tight fit, that son, yeah, it suits you. She was a character, like, I always remember the Yorkshire Terriers, there was always trying to drink out your cups of tea and stuff, and she had a table next to her, and it was just piled up like New York with tablets, what she'd been given for ailments, and anybody popped their head in the door, oh, I've got something for that, and she was like a drug dealer, she'd be giving them all the paracetamols or whatever, you know what I mean? My granddad was quiet, he never spoke about the war like a lot of that generation. He used to do all the cooking and baking and butchering because he was a chef in the army. So he had a second-hand shop on Glasgow Street and later on Woodcock Street. My grandma would go to the auctions, bid for stuff, and if stuff didn't sell at Bateson's, Mr. Bateson would sign it over to my grandma. He'd say, right, put it on Annie Norris's tab, and she'd take it away. My dad was resentful because he'd be bringing mattresses back full of feathers, but there's people for feathers then, they'd recycle feathers before this throwaway society that we're living now. So my granddad, quiet guy really, he had his second-hand shops, he always had a bird outside the front way as a canary or a budgie singing away. He liked them birds, and I think he'd got that from his grandparents really, because I think they always had birds, animals. My grandma and granddad used to travel up to Withensea, like I said earlier, with a cartload of fruit and sell it either on the knocking on people's doors and asking them if they wanted to buy fruit, or they'd stand in a prominent position in the town centre and people would go to them and buy the fruit. One of her sons, called Frank, he used to have the donkeys at Withensea every year. They used to just stay there for the season. He was one of the elder brothers. But good person to ask would be my dad about that really. But I do ask him because I'm fascinated. But I remember him at the second-hand shops. And one of the things I do remember about him at the second-hand shops, so Donny Osmond, Tom Jones and people like that were out of flavour, and David Cassidy, but they'd have all the posters and all the framed pictures. Nobody wanted them, but my grandma would have ended up with them out of Bateson's probably, do you know what I mean? Or give them to Mrs. Norris, she'll take them away. That was one of my early, because we'd sit there in the summer with him outside the shop. So there's sort of more memories that you remember.
And your brothers and sisters, do you want to sort of say a bit about them growing up? What was it like?
So we moved from Lineage Street to Redburn Street, and it was on a small house. So my brother Johnny, he lived in the attic. Me and one of my sisters lived in a back bedroom. My parents in the front bedroom, and my sister Joanne was a lot younger than us. She lived in a cot for the first, well, you know, however long that is. And then the house was deemed unfit for human habitation, which it was fit, just didn't have a bathroom. It had an outside toilet, so we had to get washed in the sink, and that was embarrassing when people came round. Are you coming out? Does it look like it? I'm in the bath, I'm in the sink, or whatever. So when I think it might have been 11, we moved to Sefton Street, and that's when we had our first bath. And so Jodie had my younger sister Joanne had their own bedroom, and I'd share with my brother John. We had a record player in there, 2 single beds, got on each other's nerves, condensation running down the walls. And then, like I say, my sister, she went to university in Portsmouth, so she was the first to leave, and she's always lived away from Hull ever since. So she's lived all over, but she's now in Eastbourne. She had lived in London for a few years, which was great because I used to visit her there and see the city. Then Johnny moved out when he was 16, and it wasn't long after that my sister Joanne, she moved out. So there's only me at home. So we got on all right. I'm really close to my brother and sister now. We wouldn't have any squabbles really. We was always at cousins' houses because my Aunt Rose, she had like 8 kids, so we'd go visit them. And like my Aunt Nora, it's funny that because growing up, my grandma and granddad sort of brought my sister Julie up. My Aunt Nora, who was married to my Uncle Jim, my grandma's brother, they had no kids, couldn't have kids. So before me, there was my Uncle Sam that brought him up. Then there was my cousin Wendy that brought her up. Then I came along and I was like their son for 5 years. And then as I grew older, my sister would fit that place. And with my brother John, there was Francis and Charlie Fox. Francis was my granddad's sister. Their nature, Johnny coming, brought him up. Like I said, my sister Joanne went with Nora Barnes. And it was that extended family thing back then, which I suppose it still goes on because there's a lot of single parents out there. But I think that was as it was in the north. I don't know if it was everywhere. You see stuff on TV about extended families, but we did have this network of an extended family. So if my mum and dad weren't getting on and was arguing, we'd be at aunties or uncles and we'd be farmed off somewhere till they sorted themselves out. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it was good. You learn a lot, don't you, from older generation. That's why I like older people. They've got so much wisdom to teach you and to pick up on.
Have you ever lived anywhere else other than Hull?
Any what?
Have you lived anywhere else other than Hull?
No. I've always lived in Hull, apart from living on the rigs. So, no, I love Hull. I'm like a stick of rock. I'm Hull through. I'm proud of this city. I love it in equal measures. I love it some days. I hate it some days. But it's been good for me. I like the people here. The people are warm, friendly. You'll always get a smile. Hi, how's the family? And I think that's all we all want, innit? It's good. I met some good friendships I've got loads of acquaintances like everybody, but I really like it here. I do go to other cities a lot, London and places, and I get my fix that way. I don't want to live in anywhere else. Maybe when I get older.
So, school. What was school like for you?
So, Chiltern Street, that was sort of all boys' school, sort of remember it a little bit. Assembly, singing religious songs. Then that was close to us. And then Francis Askew, I'd walk to Francis Askew every morning with my friend Kev Riches over the flyover. We did that for quite a few years. The teaching wasn't great, to be honest. It was just school, wasn't it? I don't know. I suppose Raleigh, you sort of learn a bit more about the Wales. So I loved history. I like my history lessons. I like my art lessons. I want an academic. I don't profess to be. But the RE teacher was good. Dr. Martin, that was his nickname. He'd be telling you all about Stonehenge and Druids and stuff like that. So I was fascinated with all that. I think for me, school was, when I left school, it was under 18s, Wally's, which was Wally Mays. He had the Wally's under 18s club in town opposite Wally's, which is now Prince Regent pub. But after that, it was a roller disco. Then we got to Romeo's under 18s. I'd go to Wigan Casino, even though I wasn't old enough to be in there, but we'd go every weekend. That was great. We only did it a few times, really. But met some good people, so you'd be dancing from midnight till 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning. Met a few lifelong friends. Then after that, I suppose, like everybody who like alternative music. It was Spaders and it was Silhouette nightclub. So Spaders, anything happened there. You met great people, had a few romances. Silhouette was the gay club, which everybody felt safe in there. Upstairs was like, let's think, it was a living room basically. It was a Georgian house or late Victorian house. The basement of the house was the bar and the dance floor. The upstairs was the living room, and people would, the older generation, older than us, would sit up there. And there was one, and what did they call it? There was a seat where you wouldn't sit if you was gay, you'd sit on it. I think they call it the meat rack. You'd go sit on the meat rack if you was looking for a date upstairs in the Silhouette. And it was like somebody's living room. There was Molly on the door. She'd frighten you to death. She was a scary looking character, but if you got the okay, you was in, and you was under 18, you was in. And like I said, the older generation, there was all like bits of dandies. There was characters like Twaddles, Andrew Allen, who was nicknamed Slack. There was Wendy, who used to work on the ferries. He was a pianist. So you didn't really get to know him that well, because downstairs, where the music was, and if you was looking for love, that's where on the dance floor. So there was Pete Wilson. I called him Pete Butcher because I actually worked on the rigs with him, and he went out with the owner of the club, Ray. And Peter was, they always talk about London and the Blitz Club and places like that and hell, and I suppose that was our Blitz Club because I left school in 1980, so I was too old for punk, even though my friends was into punk. I was more into the two-tone stuff. I was into the specials. It was Black and White Unite. There was a lot of political stuff going on, which we never learnt at school. We learnt more about politics through the music that we was listening to. So the Clash was my band. So I say I was too old for punk, but the Clash was around a lot longer than the Pistols, and the Clash spoke to me. This is life. This is politics. I love Joe Strummer. So they play all this great music downstairs in the Silhouette and Spaders. But Silhouette was the gay club. Everybody knew it was the gay club. There was Romeo's and Juliet's. There was for like the trendies. That was like boy meets girl sort of venues. But the Silhouette was the gay club. Polar Bear was another gay venue, as was Vauxhall back in the day on Ezel Road, the pub. Nobody bothered you. So you felt safe. And Henry's was a rough old place. That was on Allaby Road. I always felt safe in there, but if you wasn't from round there, you'd stick out like a sore thumb. And if there was ever any trouble in there, it was like the scene from Star Wars. There was a fight breaks out, the music could stop. The person who was causing the bother would get thrown out. As soon as that person was thrown out, the music had come back on as if nothing had happened. It was mental. But I never saw any fights in Silhouette. The only time I would see any trouble at Silhouette, it was when the trendies would be leaving Romeo's or LA's and bump into somebody outside Silhouette. Oh, you're a faggot, you're a gay, you're this, that and the other. So you might get the odd skirmish then, but I never really saw it.
When did you start going to
Silhouette?
Yeah, Silhouette.
Silhouette as bad as 16. I was too young to get in both venues. For suppose they knew that really. Welly Club, there was a bit more stricter, but I managed to get in there to see all the punk band, the second generation of punk, the UK Subs, the Members, the Revillos, Specials. Who else played there? I can think. Monochrome Set. Bauhaus never played, even though they were supposed to play. This is we had played here. It's a dump. And then there was Dingwalls. That was another good venue. That was down George Street. That was a good venue. It burnt down, spontaneously combust, however you want to call it. I think it was an insurance job. That was a good venue. Eurythmics played there. Lots Southern Death Cult, people like that played there. Really good venue. It's always been good for bands, really. Thinking back, it wasn't always about London. A lot of people think it was all London centric, but it was all happening in Hull as well. I was talking to my mate Mark Wigan, and he studied at Hull University, fine art, and he's gone on to do designs for Doc Martin boots, and he had his museum of club culture and stuff like that. But when we had this conversation, he says, when I came to Hull to study, he says you had about at least 16 clubs to go to. You had double that in the amount of bars. So you could go drinking all day, then you could go to a club, and after that club left, you could go to Vicky Coffee Club, you could go to Cameo Club, you could go to Pacific Club, and that was unheard of. And he says Manchester was okay, but it was the Hacienda, or it was some sort of place where Bernard Manning would play. So Manchester didn't have that much going for it really. Hull always had lots of entertainment going on, loads of it, do you know what I mean? For young people and old people. Maybe with being a dock, you know, like Liverpool and that. I reckon Liverpool have had the same sort of numbers. But I know it was never short of anywhere to go. If you wanted a drink late anywhere, you went to there weren't great clubs, don't get me wrong. Vicky was a rough old joint. They sold bowls under the counter. Cameo Club was rough, full of prostitutes, but that's where people did the business, and you had a late night. But when you're 16, 17, you've got bags of energy, so you just want to stay up all night, don't you? Welly shut quite early. Spaders was probably 1:30 out the door by 2. Silhouette, I think there was okay, because it was like a members club as well, so they could just lock the door. But I do remember Silhouette, they had a license. You could go there on a Sunday where a lot of places were shut, but Silhouette would open on a Sunday, but they had to provide food. That was one of the rules. So it was a chicken in a basket job, you know what I mean? And I think some of the other clubs took it on later because they saw a reason to open and a way of making money. But yeah, I remember that chicken in the basket. So everybody went there if they were starving, basically, and a bit of a dance or a drink, you know what I mean?
Where was Silhouette?
Silhouette was on Springbank, and there's a record shop next door on Springbank now. So it was you went up the stairs so it's at the very beginning of Springbank. You'd walk up the stairs, and that's where you pass the door with Molly. If she give you the nod, you was in. If she didn't like you weren't in. So you'd go in and you'd be on the top level, and then you'd go downstairs to the dance place, and the bar at the back. So it probably held about, I couldn't quite say, probably 100 people, but people might say different. But with their the fire laws, I don't think that it wasn't really geared up. If you had a fire in there, it would have been trouble, you know what I mean? But 100 people. But it wasn't busy every night because it was open every night. There was other clubs before the Silhouette, but I wasn't privy to. I think there was one called Pink Flamingo. That was another one down there, down Springbank. Or it could have been Silhouette before it changed its name. I'm not really sure.
What about HU3? Where did you go out there?
HU3, so there was a club off it. What's the street called? There was Ara Club. I remember that. You could get in there under 18. That was off one of the side streets. I think it was down Harris Street. That's how it got the name Harris Street. You know, Ara Club. So we'd go there. Rainers was always a dump growing up. Really, it was like a sawdust on the floor job. It's only in recent years it's had a makeover with a nice swanky bar, nice seating and stuff. Dairy Courts was more my dad's pub. Halfway with my dad's pubs. I didn't spend much time drinking on Heather Road, to be honest. We had a pub round the corner from where we lived down Redburn Street called the Lion Pub. My parents used to go in there because it was literally a stone throw from where we lived. And Nick Mellor's dad had that, Pete Mellor's. You'd get people like Barry Rutter, the actor, in there, and Tom Courtney now and again. But I was more for town. I was Cheese, Bass House. Where else would I say? Later on, the Room, which was a good venue. The Blue Lamp was a good venue down Norfolk Street. Guy who lived in this house, Mick Greaves, he used to run it. The Alex was my grandparents' pub, so we'd go in there, but only if the grandparents was in there. So really for me it was town. I was more of a townie. Romeo's under 18s, LA's, Silhouette Spiders, Welly, Oasis Wine Bar. That was a regular place down Poston Gate, still there. They had a photography studio next door where you could develop your own photographs and stuff. Where else? Oh, the old White Hart pub I liked in town, down the passage there. Blue Bell. All traditional working men's pubs really. Yeah, there was all right. Would definitely be in White Hart every Saturday night growing up before I started working offshore and stuff. But even when I came home, we'd go in there because it was familiarity, wasn't it? You got to know the people in there and people who used to go in there. But the town's totally changed now. I think a lot of the young uns use the old town like we use the old town, rather than the Cheeses and the Basses and places like that. Star and Garter was another busy pub in the town. They put films on in there. I saw a guy watch The Exorcist in there and he collapsed and he was 6 foot odd. And he says, oh, it's hot in here, isn't it? Oh, yeah. I thought, here we go, you know what I mean? But it was a horrible film.
What was the entertainment like in the pubs that you went to in town, or the clubs?
I suppose we made it all right. It was more of a meeting up place rather than entertainment. If you wanted entertainment, you go to a club. In the pubs, it was just meeting up with old friends and stuff. The pubs that my dad used to go into, like the Inkerman and places like that, they'd be singing. They'd be singing going down. But that was the old traditional pubs, what our parents used, you know what I mean? The younger generation didn't go in for all that. New York was another popular venue opposite the Tower nightclub. That got demolished quite a few years ago. So all the young punks would go in there for a dance and stuff. Saw Roland Gift performing there a few times. They had a back room. And there's that lights on. Go for it.
Yeah. Coming back to clubs, so like Silhouette and The Lamp and all those. What would you say was, what were they like? You know, just look a little
Blue Lamp was brilliant. Jed Cheeseman, who was in the Rats, which became Spiders from Mars, he used to run the Blue Lamp and he'd have acts on most nights and it was real good. And then it became The Room, was it? No, The Room was somewhere else. Blue Lamp, it was really good. It was mid-80s, so it was before the rave culture kicked in. So he'd have all blues bands and American bands, and it was always cheap to get in. That the pool tables at the back. Silhouette was just familiar, I suppose. There was nobody trying to outdo each other and stuff like that. It wasn't full of fashion victims. You was rough and ready. There's a few people did get dressed up, like say Pete Wilson, Pete Butcher, I call him, Paul Weems. I think you might be talking to at some point. They used to have these fun nights where it was Miss Hollywood, which was fun, and then there was Miss Beach Ball or something like that. So all the gay guys would camp it up and get dressed up as beach babes or Miss Winter Wonderland. There'd be fairies for Christmas, do you know what I mean? And the mime to ABBA or whatever music it was. So Peter used to be the ringleader for all that, and there is films of that which Kate's going to be aware of. When she speaks to Paul, he recorded stuff like that. He's got it all on cine camera, so that's going to be great for the archive. No, it was real. It was a gentle place, if that's the right word. It was. You didn't feel any sense of any danger. You just didn't step out of line. But whereas Henry's, you just had to look at somebody wrong and you'd be in a fight, because it was very tribal you're not from round here. Whereas there, come on down, do you know what I mean? You don't think that at the time, but now we're talking about it like this. There was nobody's looking down the noses at you, do you know what I mean? There was Bulldog, he was the glass collector, everybody knew him. And I think half the time he was speeding off his head, so he'd be drinking all the dregs and what people left behind. But he died a couple of years back, where he was a character. I've took his picture a few years ago as well, because I recognised him. People didn't realise he was still alive. That was his nickname. What a nickname to be calling somebody Bulldog. And I don't even know if he was gay. I don't know if he was bisexual or what, but Twaddles was a big character, like I said earlier. I worked with him briefly at British Aerospace. He passed away a few years back. He was on a couple of Russell's pictures. But he was camper than camp, yeah. And then there's Wendy, who played the piano on the ferry. He was always immaculate. Really, he was on my Peacock's wall at the Elm Street Gallery. He always was pristine, white suit. He wrote a book anyway. I don't know what the name of the book is, but it'd be worth checking out because the stories are silhouette in there. I would have thought. Wendy Gibson. That was his. I think his name was Roy. His real name's Roy Gibson. Yeah, and everybody called him Wendy. But him and Candida Barry or Bobby Mandrell. I might have this wrong, but I know for sure that Roy Wendy Gibson definitely went to the Falklands, and there was all a bit gay guy on the ship going off to the Falklands to fight a war. But by the time they came back, I think Ray was on it, and that was all into it. By the time they came back, they was all getting dressed up as women and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? They really went for it, and so they all got on really well together. But I think Ray it might be Ray rather than Roy, who told me that story when I was with Russell in his house that day.
So you mentioned drag.
Drag.
What are your memories of drag in a whole? Well,
I hadn't seen a lot of it, to be honest. I've seen Bobby Mandrell, who is the number one, and then I've seen a lot of stuff at Hull Pride, and now it's gone up a gear. I think when I first started seeing Bobby Mandrell, he was the first person, barring Dick Emery and people like that on TV. He was the first guy, first gay guy I saw dressing up, and I just thought his act was absolutely amazing. So he starts off doing all these big Showtime numbers, Dusty Springfield, Shirley Bassey, people like that, and going through an array of costumes. He must go through about 12 costume changes. But then at the very end, when I first ever saw him, it was at Miller's Pub, and I saw him, and it was a real small pub, and I didn't know what to expect. So I thought, oh, this is a bit different on a Sunday afternoon. But at the end of the show, I was in tears because this man, he took all the glamour away, he took all his clothes away, and he got his makeup, and he rubbed all the makeup off his face, he took his wig off, and he got dressed in a pair of black slacks and a white shirt, and he started singing. He sang this song throughout this unveiling of himself as a man, as Charles Aznavour, I am a man, that's what I am. And I've heard different cover versions of it. Mark Harmon sings a great cover version of it. And it's so apt. And speaking to Ray last year, he says, I tried it a few times and it wasn't working. And then he says, I was in the bath and he had this epiphany and he knew how to sing it properly, and he knew where it was going wrong, and then he did it, and he has it. I'd say every time he does his act now, he does that song, and you just think, wow, yeah, what a start. And he is. I've got a lot of respect for Ray. So anybody who gets the chance to see him should definitely see him. And when I first saw him, his outfits were good, but now he's gone to another level because he spends a fortune. I saw his wardrobe last Christmas with Russell, and he reckons it's got, I don't know if it's 150 or 250,000 pounds worth of costumes. It's just the back room is just a walk-in wardrobe. He's got shoes, he's got wigs, he's got heads of mannequins with wigs, and all these amazing array. of costumes. He said the first time he did the pregnant nun, it was a sheet off one of the tables off the ship, and it made it into a nun's habit. But now he's like Chubby Brown, but he's not as blue. He is cheeky with his humour. He's not racist, and I just think it's amazing how we can stand there for 2 hours and do what he does, because it takes a lot of bottle, doesn't it?
You mentioned Miller's Pub.
Yeah, that's up
Where's that?
near the flyover on Ezel Road. That used to be really, really popular. Now it's not as popular. I only go there now because they have a horse fair there once a year, and I go there for that. So all the gypsies and travelling people, they're going there when the fair's on. So they buy and sell horses, they put food on, and they make a full afternoon of it, you know what I mean? But it's not what it was. Rainers is probably the busiest pub on Ezel Road now. Rider Club is a proper club. They have They have the over 55s club on a Wednesday, which is busy, and then on a Sunday they have acts on. I haven't seen any drag acts in there though. But yeah, it's popular, you know what I mean?
And you mentioned in Miller's Pub seeing Bobby Manjot.
That was the first time I'd seen him, yeah. So I know Russell had seen him in the George because he lived next door to the George when he was in Hull studying fine art and photography.
Can you just tell us who Russell is?
Russell Boyce is a friend of mine of 45 years. Inspired me to get into photography, and we've become really good friends. He left Hull after doing his fine art degree, did sports photography. He then ended up working for Reuters International, and he's in semi-retirement at the moment. We just did a big exhibition at Ulmer Street Gallery last year, which was phenomenal. 15,000 people through the door, and we speak every week about different things. So last year he did a film about Ray, and I went along for the interview and stuff, and Ray really opened up. Ray's had a couple of cancer scares, he had a lot of chemo, but I think he was really warm and generous, and he told us everything we wanted to know. I thought Russell asked some great questions. One of the questions that sticks with me was, when you was doing this, do you think you was championing the LGBT cause? He says, no, I wasn't anything to do with any of that. I never thought of it like that, even though people from that community do think highly of Ray. But I thought, yeah, that was honest. And so just Ray's story is just phenomenal. He'd worked away for 30 odd years on the ferries, and it was bad acting daft. He got into this drag, getting dressed up in drag and stuff, and now he's made I won't say a living, but he's made a lot of people laugh. And Ray says, if I can make one person laugh, my job's done. I've done what I needed to do. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's good. So that's who Russell was anyway.
And so earlier you mentioned Polar Bear as being a gay club. Some people, if you're listening, might remember it now as more of a music venue. Tell us about Polar Bear.
So Polar Bear, it was down on its heels for years. It's only in recent years that it's become a student bar fully. I think on a Tuesday night, they have a real late night on a Tuesday for the students. But for years, it was looking like it could close at any point. Like a lot of pubs, the recession hit it bad. And it's such a big bar, you only need 10 people in there and it still looks empty. So the gay community took over that. And I suppose it was on the way on Springbank, it was towards that area. You could walk from the Polar Bear to the Silhouette, 5 minutes from the Polar Bear. So it was a mix. It wasn't all gay, it was a mixture. Like Vauxhall, it's not all gays. And then there was Darley's Arms, which is now, it was Middle Child's place, but now they've moved on somewhere else, the drama group. So there was always little places where gay people could go. And I think we was talking about Cameo Club, Ocean 11 and Elder Grey. a lot of the gay community would go there as well because there was out not outcast, outsiders. Do you know what I mean? They want your conventional people. So I suppose they all stuck together really and felt safe in these places where they all went. So Polar Bear, yeah, you'd go in there and there'd be one corner would just be full of gay people. Didn't bother anybody, just got on with it. And then you'd have the guys playing dominoes, darts, smoking when smoking was allowed in pubs. So it was down on its heels for a good 10, 15 years. And the younger generation would go to the Blow Lamp and then later the Room. I was too old for... I went to the Room a few times, but it wasn't for me. And then you're in relationships and other things change, don't they? Do you know what I mean? You don't go clubbing as much as you used to because you've got other priorities, haven't you? And you found who you want to be with anyway, so you go to the cinema or you go away or do something like that. So I think it's an age thing, isn't it? Clubbing and not so much bands, but clubbing. I think you're probably from 18 to 24, 25. Then after that, it sort of tails off a bit because you've either met somebody or you want to spend your money on something, maybe you rent housing or whatever. Do you know what I mean? I think your money, when you're younger, you've got a lot more free money. You can afford them shirts, them shoes. As you get older, you need food, you need your property. A treat's an album, or a real treat's going to see a gig out of town, a train fare. So I think just it's 18 to 24, 25, and then it doesn't stop overnight, but you just prioritise your money on different things, don't you?
What are your thoughts on Hull's kind of Hull as a city? You mentioned earlier that you love it and you wouldn't move anywhere else, but
I love it in equal measure. I love it and I hate it. I'm the eternal optimist. I think Hull's on the up. I think we've got a lot of problems with bridges and roads and all that, but it's not going to last forever. The Queen's Garden's getting sorted, the Maritime's getting sorted. We've got the wind farm here now, which I work at Siemens. That's expanding. That's going to be work there for at least another 10 years. The guys are on good wages. That's going to be a lot of money when you've got 1,000 people working there, averaging £33,000 a year wages. That's going to be a lot of money going into the economy. We've got the workforce for this place. If we could get another factory like that, brilliant, and I think it will come because I'm the eternal optimist. I think once that road is finished, I think we can get stuff in and out of the city into Europe. We're not in Europe now, but we are the closest to it. And there's a lot of brownfield sites all over Hull which need redeveloping, and I think people will get fed up of London and the price of everything down there. And I think once all this comes together in the next 5 years, it's going to be really tricky for young people to get a house and stuff like that, because I hope it doesn't happen that way. I hope they do build more houses, affordable houses, but I really do believe that new road down Castle Street, which should have been built 25 years ago, will be a turning point in Hull's history. And I think it has taken 25 years, but I'm optimistic it's going to be a major change for the city, because I think people will relocate here, and we have got a young workforce who need the work. And it's not just 1,000 people who work at Siemens, it's all the other little add-ons, it's all the cafes, it's all the... Well, think of it like this, there's 1,000 people and they're all earning £33,000 a year. So if they're living at home, brilliant, they're out in the pubs, the clubs, the restaurants, they're going to be spending that money. When they get at home, it's 3 times your wages, so you can get a property worth 130,000 on their wages, so that's doable. If they've got a partner, it's well doable. So they're still going to be able to have a quality of life living in Hull, because it's still a cheap place to live. When I was their age, I had to go work away to try and earn that sort of money to get a roof above my head and stuff like that, because otherwise I'd have been renting. Luckily I've done what I've done and I'm mortgage free and I can afford to work part time. But yeah, I think it's on the up. And even in the Times the other week, there was a big article that it's one of the top 10 places to live. Well, 15 years ago, it was crap town. We had city of culture. Now it's one of the most desirable places to live. So just don't believe everything you read, innit?
And how would you say Hull has changed from being
You know,
born here all the way to living here now?
massive changes for me. So St Stephen's wasn't there. The where I'm working Siemens now was a silted up dock, wasteland. There's still lots of room for improvement. All the load line area needs to be reimagined. We need to do something with that because that is a blighted area now. Someone's going to get killed there. That will happen. Maybe not in my lifetime, but listening to this recording in 200 years' time, there'll be more changes, massive changes. But the people are the same. My dad's generation, happy, go lucky, friendly, smile on the face, how's the family, got a few problems, talk about it on Ezra Road over a bag of chips. The people don't change. The city infrastructure has changed. The city's been pedestrianised, the civic buildings are beautiful, we've got a wonderful art gallery, we've got all 3 museums. I'm lucky because I get out of Hull and I see what goes on in other museums and galleries. I think we do need some new people at the top, at the Ferrens. It might come, it might not, but I could do some great stuff in there, but it won't happen. But that's me on a wish list. But no, I think the Maritime Museum, that's going to be finished next year. Queen's Gardens is going to be finished next year. The Arctic Corsairs moving. Okay, these are only superficial things, but it will bring people to the city and see. Because Hull, to me, was and is still, it must have been the capital of the North at one point because we lost so much during the war and the civic buildings that have survived are really impressive. So we have lost a lot, but there's so much history because of the trade and all the rest of it. And that's why I keep going back to this optimism. It's a trading city. We're neighbours with Europe. We can get to Europe quicker than we can get to London. So all these brownfield sites will eventually get redeveloped. We've got problems like drugs and all that, but what city hasn't, do you know what I mean?
What would you say is unique about Hull as a city?
Good question. For me, I live on Ezra Road, so Ezra Road to me is a village within the city. It's a small area. The population of Hull is great. It's 300,000, I think. You can get anywhere in Hull within 15 minutes. You can stand at a bus stop for 5 minutes and you'll have friends for life if you want. People are generous with the time, and if I have, like I said, I've been everywhere. You can ask directions in another city, and I'm sorry, I'm a foreigner here myself, or I'm a tourist. Where in Hull, even if they don't know where it is, they'll try and help you, or they'll direct you to somebody who can help you. I think it's just the attitude of the people. I think northern cities are like that. Newcastle's like that. I think the north, because we've been forgotten about by Westminster forever, we've had to learn to adapt, and we've just become a lot of inward thinking, but everybody's welcome, aren't they? I think, do you know what I mean? I think it is a welcoming city, so I suppose that would be the unique thing for me. Or maybe that's just me being a dreamer, but I like to think it is a welcoming city. It has been for me anyway. I know I'm born and bred here, and I'm sort of known, but I think if you ask anybody a question, if they can help you, they will, and it is welcoming, yeah.
How do you think the city is viewed by the rest of the country?
I think people who diss it haven't been. So a lot of people don't even know where it is. People have put Hull on the map like Lucy Beaumont, Roland Gift, beautiful South. So when people, everything but the girl. So when you start talking about bands, people relate bands like Oasis are from Manchester, or the Beatles are from Liverpool. If you mention bands to people, what bands are from Hull, people like the bands that come out of the city. I don't know, you'd have to ask other people that. I'm not sure. I know it got crap 10 City for years, but I always used to say, well, have they ever been? And it's usually poor journalism that says it's crap. Until they've been and seen it, I think it's just poor journalism, isn't it?
Well, thank you, George.
And what do you hate about Hull?
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So what I hate about Hull is the joined up thinking's not there. We've got a great city. They always talk about there's not enough money for this, that and the other. We've got a massive area called St Andrews Dock, William Wright Dock. These things, there is something in the pipeline, but it's going to take 10 years to develop that area. The Lowland area, in any other city that's got a waterfront, even Birmingham that has canals, Liverpool celebrate their waterfront, London celebrate their waterfront. What do? We just let it rot. And there's a massive area in West Hull, and it's a blighted area, and I'd just love to see it get transformed into a marina and cafes and places to eat and drink, instead of it just being run down. And they say there's no money there, but if they invest the money, people will come. Hotels there, accommodation there, whatever it takes, people will come. And yes, it might take 10 years, because that's one of the good things about Hull. Things do happen slowly. So Birmingham, when I go to Birmingham, it's full of high-rise flats. London, high-rise flats. Other big cities, Manchester, high-rise flats. We're slowly getting rid of all our high-rise flats. So after the war and 90% of Hull was decimated in some shape or form, we didn't just go building loads and loads of blocks of flats. And so in one way, we've got big skies, and that's one of the key things about Hull. We haven't got a lot of light pollution and stuff like that. We've got a great city, and I think it will change in the next 5 years even more. City culture was all about making the city fit for the next century, and I think they've started that, and if they continue that, we're getting films made here now. We're getting a lot of film work getting done here. It's a great place to make films. It'll come. I love it. We just need to spend a bit more on some of the other areas that have been blighted and invest in youth clubs and stuff like that. Because that's a knife crime. We know it's a bad one, but we never had knife crime when we was growing up. And I asked myself, why didn't we have them? Because we had places we could go from being 16 to 18, under 18s clubs. And there was no need for the knife crimes then, do you know what I mean? Some of the stuff I see on the internet these days, I'm thinking it's scary to even go out there, but you can't let the media run your head, because it doesn't happen very often. But when it does happen, it's traumatic, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Thank you, George. I really appreciate your time, mate.
All positive, man, innit? Always try to be.
I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay, so we're recording now. I'm here with George Norris. This is George's second interview on the 25th of June 2025. In the first part, George, you were talking with Alex about your kind of life story, origin story, if you like. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about your taking photos and your photography. So I was thinking, for the first question, I don't think it came up in your previous conversation. How did you actually start with photography? Where did that come from?
So I was working offshore in the North Sea, and I needed something to do in my time off. And because of my cultural history background with my family scrap dealers and everything, I was looking through, well, my mum died basically. My mum died, and I was looking through our family photos, and there was such a treasure trove of great pictures. And then I stumbled across Russell Boyce's work, and I thought, I need to be documenting my city now, because every time I used to come home from the rigs, there was things changing in the city. So I thought, it started off really as a hobby, and I started taking pictures of the architecture, people, places, bit of street art and that was with an Olympus 10 camera, which I'd had previous film style years earlier, just taking family shots. And then I suppose it became more of a passion, and so every time I came up, I'd be taking more pictures and more pictures. Then I upgraded my camera. Like I say, Russell took pictures of me as a boy, 19, young man, collecting scrap. So I was taking pictures of all that sort of the community around me, and getting books and getting informed with photography, what other photographers, and seeing what photographers I like. And I've been doing it for 15, 16, 17 years now. So I've got a massive archive of 80,000 pictures, and I'm out every day, most days, with a camera on my back. And if I don't get a picture that day, fine, there's always going to be another one. So today was the first day I hadn't taken the camera out because I had things to do. But usually I've got a camera on my back, going to work on the streets. And there's always them moments where you just think, yeah, let's have a picture, let's have a conversation with somebody. And it's a passport to get to knowing people, really. And through the camera, I've really got to know my city. I knew it pretty well when I was collecting scrap, but then I was away from my city, working away 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And now people expect to see me with my camera, because I was in Rainers on Saturday night. There was a guy called Bobby Darman, the Black Elvis. I documented the full evening and afternoon. There was a school reunion, and it's just a nice thing to do, and it makes people happy. I think we all need a witness to our lives, and I really believe in that. It's not a mantra, but I think people don't get recognised, and there's a lot of talent in the city, and the people who haven't got the talent, they still need to be witnessed, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm interested in that being a way, that this kind of coming and going off to work on the rigs and then coming back, and that showing a kind of change of changes that we wouldn't notice if we were just there all the time.
Yeah, it's the little things like shop fronts. Shops change, the type fonts change, the fashions change. People are generally the same throughout the world, but fashions change, shops change, street signs change. There's always change. Buildings get renovated, some buildings go into dereliction, then other people come along and turn them around, they turn them into something new. And I think one of my heroes is Chris Killip, and he was always about long-term engagement with subjects. So I feel I'm doing that with the gypsy community, and I've done that for the last 8 to 10 years, doing the gypsies that come to Hull, the horse drives, and the people in that community. So I've got a massive archive of that, and because I'm sort of in that tribe, I'm accepted where some people won't be accepted and think, oh, who's this guy, what's he about? But because of my background with my dad and being a horse dealer and trader, it gives me access to the people. And they like it, and I like it, and I get some great stories. I've been over to the cemetery this week and took some great pictures of the travellers that come from Barnet Castle. So I learn things about Barnet Castle, which I wouldn't know, near Newcastle. And we've got a real friendship now. So going back to Chris Killip, he was always about long-term engagement. So if I've got another 10 years of photography in me, that's what I intend to do. And it's not just the gypsies, it's the pub culture. I'm not big on music and bands and stuff, because I think other people are doing that. But it's just the everyday stuff, the people on the streets, and as a road predominantly, HU3. I do go to London on a regular basis because I'm obsessed with street art and the politics of street art and how it changes. And every time I go to my happy place, which is Shoreditch and Brick Lane, I see a lot of changes around there. So I try and get the pictures of the street art and the paste ups, because that might not mean anything to anybody at the moment, but give them 10 or 15 years, those changes, it'll be a different political landscape. Like at the moment we're going through all this Palestinian stuff, and governments change, all governments changed since Thatcher. We've had Tories, we've had Liberals, now we've got Labour. So it's a reflection of what goes on. And going back to my books, lots of people who I like what's her name, Levitt. She took stuff like that. There was the other guy, not Tony Ray Jones. I forget the other guy. He did so. It'll come to me. And he'd take pictures of. Back then, it wasn't paste ups and street art. It was chalk drawings on the streets. Roger Main, he took loads of pictures of that, as did Shelley Baker. So I get informed by them and what they've taken pictures of and bring it up to date, because you can only take pictures of what's in front of you. And I do like I say, I love street art. I've got a massive archive of street art.
Mm. And how did you land on those subject areas? You've talked a bit about the travelling community, street art.
I think I'm fascinated with culture. I'm really, because I had a lot of time on my hands on the rigs, I'd read a lot, and it was the early days of YouTube. It was MTV actually when it first came out, and some of the artists that I like Peter Blake, the pop artist, and I think all this street art that we've got now, all this decoupage and stuff like that, I think it all stems from the 60s, and it's the new stuff. So my reading is photography and art. I watch a lot of BBC 4, I watch a lot of Sky Arts, I watch a lot of YouTube. So I'm like a magpie. I'm just a sponge, and it all comes out in the mix. I could have gone a tangent about last night's conversations, but I won't, because that's not for this. But I had a really good discussion with somebody about John Barry, the guy who does the music for James Bond. Well, won't go into that one, but we can talk about it if you want to later.
Yeah, so we maybe should talk a little bit about the Seen But Not Heard project, where we're looking at photographs of drag culture, LGBTQ plus, in the sort of late 80s, early 90s. But I think you've been taking photos a little bit more recently than that. So did you want to talk a little bit about, we've got some of the photos that are printed off here.
Yeah, so we've got in front of us pictures of Bobby Mandrell, also known previously as Candida Barry, and he's always been on my peripheral vision as Candida Barry. I saw him in the 80s. Russell took pictures of him in the 80s when he was doing his student days in Hull. But I've known Bobby 30 plus years, and is dedicated to his craft, his art. He spends a lot of money on his art and his costumes and everything, and he's just a brilliant showman. So anytime he's in the city and I get a chance to see him, last time I saw him at New Year, and then I saw him on Valentine's night at the Comedy Club. He's always great entertainment. And he's 70 now and he's still doing it. He's been doing it since he's probably mid-20s. He tells me the story that he was working on the ferries as a steward, and he'd get dressed up in the mess hall, and it was just more of a laugh. But then people would ask him to put on a bit of a show. So he's a showman, no doubt about that. And he's been to the Falklands. He's done a lot of travelling, and he's toured with Chubby Brown and people like that. And he's just a really nice human being. The gay culture, I used to go to Silhouette, which was a club on Spring Bank. There was you never ever saw trouble in there. The trouble started, if there was any trouble to be had, was all the other clubs kicking out, and it was just easy to pick on a gay guy or a gay lady leaving the club. But I think, generally speaking, Hull's such a tolerant city for this, the gay culture. It was very low key years ago. I mean, Bobby will tell you a different story, but I remember it was Polar Bear, it was Darley's Arms, even Vauxhall. It was underground, but people knew it was there, so they'd turn up there, they knew what to expect. And these guys like to have a party, they like to have fun. So bringing it up to future days, we've got Hull Pride now, which is massive, and Bobby's been the star acts at a few of these shows. And I think, again, the city is tolerant.
So what's let's get into kind of the situations where you're taking these photographs. What's going through your mind? Is there something that you're waiting for? Something that you're looking for specifically?
To be honest, it's very organic. If I see something, it resonates with me, I just take the picture. I am a magpie. I'll take pictures of anything, and I've got a massive archive of 80,000 pictures. But I just see life, and I just try and capture it the best way I can. And I might take on an evening like this, I might take 100 pictures, but it's all about the editing at the end. I might only show 5 of those pictures, but I've got the full show on my camera. Mm. And it's just what I want to show the world. And I think a lot of photographers are like that. It's all about the edits. I've learnt that as I've got older and got better at my craft. And it's all about what you want to reveal. But I think you learn from your mistakes. In photography, everybody makes them. You learn. I always struggle with ISO and stuff like that. And lighting in some of these venues isn't flattering. It's very difficult to get a good shot. So generally, I don't like taking pictures on the night time because I'm learning still, I suppose. But I'm learning to use the flash more now, which was something I never liked because most of the time when I've used flashes, it whitens everything. It just doesn't flatter people. So I try and do it with natural light. That's why I'm a street photographer in that way, because when you're out on the street, you can manipulate the light a bit inside the camera.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because it's very different to photograph a person performing to maybe the other kind of street style photography that you might do. Photographs that aren't necessarily of people as well. They might have people in them, but they're very much. You talked about taking photos of architecture and things like that. It's a very different kind of style, I suppose.
Well, I've learnt a lot going to Rainers and places like that and taking gigs. But like Rainers, for me, is really good because I know most of the people in there and they know what I do and there's no hassle. I'm not getting in anybody's way. I'm not spoiling the show for anybody. Again, it's my neighbourhood. They all know me and they're very receptive to what I'm doing because I share it with my community and I think you've got to share these things. I'm not there just to take somebody's soul and not show it to the community. So, and I get a lot of satisfaction by doing that. I put reels together and I put pictures of people in the show, enjoying the show. So I'm always mindful about what's going on behind me. It's not always about the acts in front of me. It's what's actually going on in the pub, the merriment and joviality. And that's probably looking at album covers of the specials and stuff like that. It's the crowd participation, everybody getting excited. Chris Killip did some at a club in the northeast, and it was at a Skinheads gig. I think the band was called Discharge or maybe Exploited, but he wasn't bothered about the band. He was more interested in the reaction of the band. So it's little things like that I've got in the back of my mind thinking, yeah, spin round now, see what's happening. And I've got some great pictures. I did one of Jeremy Corbyn came to Hull for a rally and he was talking to the people in Queen's Gardens and I knew instinctively there was something going on behind me. I just knew that the picture was there. So I spun round and everybody was looking at Jeremy and there was all, I forget what they said, it was like, we're behind you, it was solidarity and there was all punch in the air. And I got the picture. But you've also got to remember, you've got to be at these places to take these pictures. There's no point in sat at home. You've just got to put yourself in these places where these pictures are taken. And I did that on Saturday night. I came back from work. I wasn't in the mood really to go see Elvis, Bobby Diamond, but I stuck at it till 9 o'clock. It was like a day's work again, going out. But that's what I do. That's what motivates me because I know it won't be coming to Rangers again in the near future. So if I can capture it while it's in my territory, let's call it, or my backyard, I've got to do it. And the archive, when I've gone, will end up at the History Centre, so there'll be a vast record of this neighbourhood, because it's only me doing it in this way. There's people taking pictures on their mobile phones, but like I say, I'm out every day and capturing what I can while I'm fit enough to be able to do it.
Yeah, so you just mentioned there, like paying attention to the audience. What have you kind of noticed about audiences, particularly for these kind of drag performers? Are they kind of people who follow Bobby Angel around, or are they people who, are they regular people? Did you see the same faces, or are they new audiences every time? Or?
I think because Bobby's been on the scene in Hull for such a long time, it's just word of mouth. Everybody knows he's brilliant, and you know you're in for a great night. Not just any night. Even when the guys, he's had cancer scares and stuff like that, but he puts his heart and soul into it, and he makes sure everybody's all right, and he's polite to everybody. He's a bit naughty, he's a bit cheeky, but when I look around me and I see all those smiling faces, his job's done. That's, as he says, I know I've done a good job. If one person can go home and have a smile on their face, he knows he's done a great thing.
Yeah, no, that's it's interesting to sort of see these situations, the lighting that he's got for these shows and things like that. Yeah, is there any particular? Are you kind of taking in the show while you're behind the camera?
Yeah. Well, at New Year, it played Rainers, and it was New Year's Eve. It was a miserable night. It was wet, and I wasn't doing anything that night. So I went to Rainers, and there was probably, I'd say, 30 people, 40 people in the audience, which was, for New Year, that's terrible, I think. When you think of all the other clubs in the city that have been rammed, people getting drunk, etc. But it was a proper professional. He went on that stage. He could have been playing to one person, but he was playing to 40 of us, and he put his heart and soul into it. And I felt very lucky to be in the audience that night, because he was my muse for the night, and I just had him all night to myself, just taking pictures, and it was great for me. It was a learning curve for me, because I was on the floor, I was on chairs, and nobody was interested what I was doing. They just knew I was taking pictures, and they knew I'd be sharing them. And he wasn't fazed by it. He's been around people with cameras before. But yeah, I learnt a lot that night. I think New Year's Eve, it chucks it down rain, and then midnight came, everybody did all lang synes, everybody toasted the night, then it was chucking down with rain, and then Ray left about 12:30. But amazing guy.
Is there any other point where you've maybe come across these kind of performers around this, particularly sort of the HU3 area?
I've seen, I don't know if I pronounce this right, Fanny Nicenside, and he does a double act sometimes with Ray, and I've seen him in the town, and as a double act, brilliant, because they've both got their own strengths. And I saw them in the town last year with Russell, and Russell got some great pictures. I didn't want to step on Russell's toes, but I took a few. Russell took a lot, because he was making a film about Bobby at the time, and that was the reason for him to come to revisit what he did as a student. He's now 62, I think, Russell, 63. And so Russell made a really good film. I went around there when they was recording the interview, because I know where Ray's from more than Russell, because he's a Hull kid and Russell lives down in London. So I was feeding some questions, and he was so honest with his replies, talking about his life story. So I feel like I know him pretty intimately now.
Does that help when you're photographing?
Yeah, because he trusts that I'm going to not be in his way, and there's a big trust element there when you're taking pictures of people, because you could be spoiling the show for people who sat behind you, or maybe not as able as you, they might be disabled and all the rest of it. And I've got to be mindful of that as well. So I am mindful of that. So no, it's been good. Like I say, it was a muse at New Year's Eve, and he calls out, "Oh, George is in the audience," so he'll rip the back out of me for a couple of seconds, but everybody just laughs, and I think that's the nature of it. He has got comedy bones, if that's what you call it. He's a natural comic, and he doesn't ever show any nerves, and I'm sure he is, but he doesn't show it.
It's definitely, I should say that recently I saw the Dreamgirls perform at Oak Vaults in the sort of Wincolm area, and they're a double act, and it seems like double acts work really, really well, because you've got a chance to kind of change. One of them can change costume while the other one holds the stage. But I can't imagine how a solo performer works it.
He did one part of the show, and it was only time in the show that he was actually a man, and it was Roy Orbison with the black glasses, the black suit, and the black wig. Well, Ray's bald, as you know, so he's got a bonny face, and he wears all these wigs and the disguises and the personas. I mean, he's a big fan of Shirley Bassey, and the music choices, they're all inspired and they're all great. There's Dusty Springfield, like I say, Shirley, and they're not just straight songs. He's added his all little elements into them, so there might be like, well, Stock Aitken and Walkman years ago, where they used to mix different tracks, and he does that as well. It's unique. It really is unique. I can't say anything better than that, really, because he's a one-off. Hull's lucky to have him.
And also when I did go to see the Dreamgirls, there was that sense of them kind of being not confrontational, but they would sort of like pick on sort of members of the audience, and that was all part of the comedy of the act and things like that. And I did see there was an interesting kind of thing going on between the performers and the audience.
He says about Chubby Brown, because he's toured with Chubby Brown, and his manager wasn't very happy with part of Ray's acts, but the audience was more. I think Chubby Brown was ill that night, and he kept going back I think he said he went back for 3 or 4 encores, and he had this dress, which was the Union Jack, which is the finale at the end, where, well, it's not the actual final finale, because the final finale, it takes off the makeup, it takes off the costumes, and he sings a song by Charles Aznavour, "I Am a Man, That's What I Am," and it's just a beautiful thing to see, because he is acting up for us all to have a laugh, but then sad, but not melancholy. It's just like, yeah, he's given us an hour of his life, and he's taken away all the masks and the makeup, and it becomes Ray. So, and he tells us a story that he tried doing that part of the performance, and it wasn't working, and he didn't know why it wasn't working. And then one day he was in the bath, and it was all about syncing the song with how he was thinking, and he got it. He says it was just like one of them epiphany, and he did it, and it's a big part of his act. Well, it's in his acts all the time now. I'd say 90% of the time that just brings the house down, do you know what I mean? And he always gets plenty of applause. But yeah.
Just to go back a few bits, you were talking about Russell Boyce and your friendship with him. Just what's it like when there's other photographers kind of all interchangeably working with the similar subject matter, because we're sort of uncovering this body of work that lots of different photographers have done. What's that community of photographers like to be working within?
I don't think there's any competition from me or Russell. We just do our own thing. But I know bigger events, it can get a bit... I'm not paparazzi, nothing like that. it must be difficult if you had to make a living out of it and you was in that field of photography, but fortunately I'm not. When we did that night, me and Russell, I just gave him free rein because I didn't want to. I knew what the end game was with Russell. He wanted to put stills in with the film, and I knew that before I went. So that was his project really, because I've got access to Bobby all the time. He actually came all the way from London to do this, so it wasn't an issue. But I don't know what it's going to be like on the 9th of August, because there's going to be more cameramen and film men, and I think it might get a bit heated. Not with me, because I probably won't take many pictures that night, but if there's a film crew there as well, is that going to phase... It probably won't phase Bobby, it might phase the other couple of acts, but then you've also got what we talked about earlier. You've got to be mindful they're there for that audience. It's not all about, yes, this body of work needs to be done, but you've also got to be mindful of the people who are not paying to see the show, but they want to see the show, don't they?
It's just having that awareness of what everyone's kind of project is and what within their role within that project, I suppose. Is that thing. That's going to be, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of this is, we're talking about the nature of documentation, and is there any moments that you kind of you kind of having a choice as to whether you're actually going to document this, or whether there's certain bits that shouldn't be documented?
I think Russell's covered the man. Well, this Bobby Mandrell, he's not covered the other couple of acts that are there in such a thorough way. But Russell knows that this guy from the 80s, it was one of his projects being at college. So he's grown up with Ray and the changing faces of Ray, let's call it. So I'll take a few pictures on the night, but it's not. I'm there to watch the show really. And I suppose hopefully the collaboration at the end will be the film's made and there's some of these stills put into this film, and I think everybody will feel like they've got something then.
But what about if you're talking about the way that you would take photos, George, is there anything that you wouldn't take a photo of, or would shy away from pulling the trigger on
this subject? Not really, but I've learned since when we're gypsies and I'm taking pictures of the kids, I've got the consents of the adults. But in the past, I've gone around the city and I've taken pictures of young kids. But since I've grown up a bit, you can't just do that, because there's all these safeguards now, and I understand that, but I didn't understand that till somebody pointed it out to me. He says, I was on a park and there's some street art there. I thought, oh, that's good, I'll take the street art, I'll take the pictures. And there's some kids playing a football. And because of looking at people like Sid Sheldon and all these other greats from the 60s and the 70s, there was these mucky-faced kids in the streets, and anybody had access to them, like Alec Guild in the 80s, taking pictures of the snotty-nosed kids on Ezel Road. But you can't do that now, because you don't know if they've come from broken homes, there's divorces, if you share it on social media, it could be an issue. And I'm not out there to upset anybody, but indirectly it could be, because there could be fathers in prison, there could be mothers in prison, and they see the pictures of their kids, and it could be triggering stuff in people. So I think it's a different world now for doing children. Definitely, I'm always mindful, but and that's a tricky one, because you've lost the moment by having to ask a parent, can I take a picture of your child? So, but the travelling community know what I'm about. I'm not there to exploit them or their children. I want to show them in their right light. I hope that I show them in that light and not exploiting them. And if they say, take that picture down, no problem, straight away, and apologise and stuff. But I learned that lesson a couple of months ago, walking around the park with street art, a couple of kids playing football, and I heard this voice, hey, you can't do that. So I questioned it, why can't I do that? and this safeguarding issue came to me, and I thought, oh yeah, and I thanked her. I said, well, thank you for that, because I was not aware of that. So anybody getting into photography now, they need to be aware of that, because yeah, you can't just take pictures any way you want.
Yeah, I suppose it comes what you mentioned earlier on. This trust and building relationships is so important with it, isn't it?
Mm.
I kind of, yeah. I mean, I don't really have much more to ask you specifically about these photos that you've been taking of drag performers. Is there anything that you wanted? Anything else that you wanted to cover? Or?
With the new year and the other gigs I've been to see him, I feel like I've got Bobby. I've got him. Now I've got the Bobby, the Black Elvis, Bobby Diamond. And when I go to do these things, it doesn't start off as a project, but if I'm fascinated, I want to get every picture I can, because at the end of the day, when you pull away, you haven't got a second chance. Same with the gypsies. When they're near where I live, I'll go over there and I'll spend a week with them, and it's the little moments that I want to capture, them hanging, washing out, maybe washing the pots and pans. It's the moments that we don't really get a chance to see. And I have, like I said, I've got this massive archive, and I can put my hands on most of this stuff. I just love doing it.
It makes me think about the backstage. These, is there something to?
I've taken pictures. I've taken pictures backstage, putting the makeup on, putting the wigs on, putting the dresses on. I could do more of that, but I think it's been done now. Not by. I've done my little bit. Russell did it in depth, and he's got, on that night we had out, he's probably took 300 pictures on that night, and he's probably used 20. I think there's maybe 3 or 4 in the book we did a couple of years back. But because you've got that many stills, which I did at Christmas and New Year, I could make a film with all them stills, and I have done. I did a reel, and on these reels you're only allowed to put 50 pictures up. But this other big hero man is Serka-Lisa Continent from Finland, but set her stall out in Baker when, like, Alec Gill was taking pictures of that community. And what I've just found while I've been having a clear out is that she was taking pictures of the beaches around Newcastle and South Shields over a 10-year period. And it's a fascinating film, and she's talking on this DVD about the making of the film, and she was in the darkroom for 3 months printing 400 pictures of this 10-year project that she had, and they put not music, they put the oral stuff down, all the laughter, the donkeys, the kids screaming, the splashing in the water, and the zoning in on a picture, and then they're coming away from the picture. And it's 35 minutes long. I was going to buy it. I misplaced it, and I got in touch with the Sad Gallery, and they'd closed down. But now they're reopening, and they're going to sell it again. But anyway, fortunately, I found it, and it's such a fantastic film. And I think something like that could be made with these pictures. You could have the laughter, you could have the glasses, people ordering the drinks, and all that, little conversations going on, and you could make a really nice half an hour. But I know they're going to film it. It's 2 different things. You've got the gig, you can have that, people just sit back, but then you could have this other document showing you what else was going on, all the laughter and people in and out having fags. The people, maybe that's what I'm going to do on that night. I'm maybe going to just take pictures of the people, because Bobby's going to be, and the other acts, they're going to be documented. So if I can get the people laughter and doing stuff on the chairs, swaying the arms, because I think that'll be better for me, because I've been documenting Rainers for a long time now, and that might be the night, because it's going to be full of people having a good time on a Saturday night. It's early on in the month, so it's payday for a lot of people. They're maybe working themselves up for going. It's been advertised well. Yeah, that's just been a good thing, actually. Listening to myself there, yeah, let's do that. I'll just document the people.
Sometimes that's the way it works itself out as you talk about it sometimes.
Because then I've got these pictures, then we can add the people.
Yeah. Well, it just reminded me as well about how important is it to you to have your work printed, as opposed to just remaining in a digital archive.
Yeah, I think exhibitions, my friend says, there's no money in it. It's not about the money with me. It's about showing the work. There's no point in doing the work if you're not going to show the work to the community that you're from. And I've learnt that through Alec Gill. I've learnt that through Circa mostly, and Russell's still doing it. I'm going to an exhibition of his in August. He's been doing the High Street where he lives, and he's got a bit of funding to do that. I mean, I want to do another book. I don't want to do my love letter to Hull, and all these characters will be in them books, and it's just raising a bit of money, not a lot of money, and it'll happen, because I think I've done my gypsies enough now. I can continue for that for another 10 years, and I probably will, because the kids are growing up, they're getting married, they're having kids, so that's, again, Chris Killip, long-term engagement. I can do that all day long, and I've got the access. But other things, I can say I'm out with my camera all the time, and sometimes I think, oh, I ain't got anything today, but then I look back on the week and I think, you did that last week. It's because I'm curious. It's all about curiosity and keeping that curiosity going. And I've got my bike, and I'd be lost without it. I can get everywhere. I can just take pictures. So like that one there, that's that. I got access to the Tower nightclub on the roof. Bobby's played in there. But that was a postcard I did with Isabel Tracy a couple of years back. Did a stack of them. But yeah.
Is it, just as you were talking there, I was thinking about the determination to keep on collecting and keep on taking these photographs. That's also an interesting part of your work.
I think that probably as well stems from collecting scrap as a person, as a younger person, looking for stuff all the time, looking for a day's wages. There's no day's wages in this, but it's enriching in other ways. It's not about the monetary value of these pictures. It's just knowing that once I've gone, there will be an archive for people maybe in 200 years' time to look back on. Like this oral history that we're doing now, people will be able, if they want to, listen to all our voices and think, yeah, people haven't changed much. It's just that the streets have changed, the fashions have changed, the politicians have changed, but at the end of the day, we're all human and we all want to have a good time while we're here. And people like Bobby and, well, there's a lot of Bobbies in Hull at the moment. There's Bobby Down and there's Bobby Mandrell. So we've got a lot of Bobby's girls in the town. And it's because when you think of you going back in your family tree, there's not very many pictures of your grandparents as young people, or when you remember them as a child, they was always old. So I've got a couple of my grandparents when they were young. I'm very fortunate. But a lot of people haven't got them pictures. But now there's 1 billion plus pictures uploaded every day. We're saturated with images. But that's how we are. We're visually alert to everything. And it's only happened in the last 15 years like this. I mean, hundreds of thousands of years ago, it was stained glass in a church. And now it's digital images, and we all consume these images. How many pictures do we see in a day? If it's a billboard, it's advertising, it's people's pizzas on the Instagram or whatever. We're just saturated. So sometimes when I do have a week off to rest my brain from the photography and just processing what you've done, and then that's when you think, oh yeah, that was a great time. And I went to a gig the other week. It was Pauline Blackout, the Selector, and Steel Pulse, a reggae band which I've followed since I was 16, 17. They won't let me in with my camera. I was really miffed. But everybody was filming it on the mobiles. But I just sat back and I watched it. And maybe that's what the artists are going to do in the future. They're going to stop people taking cameras into the venues and just like, let's look at this for what it is, without having to document it. Because I hear people saying, I hate it when people take cameras to gigs because I'm looking at the back of somebody's screen. Why not just enjoy the moment? And maybe sometimes we miss that moment because we're looking at our mobile phones.
Brilliant. So maybe we can switch off the recorder there, maybe. Is there any final things that you wanted to add to what you said?
If anybody gets into photography, you've got to document your community, because The Clash was is one of my favourite bands, and Bernie Rhodes was the manager, and Joe Strummer said to Bernie Rhodes, well, what do I write songs about? He says, write about where you're from, not about Route 66. You don't live on Route 66, you live in Ladbroke Grove. Write about that. And I've taken that to mean that with photography as well. Document from where you are, because outside this door, 10 yards outside this door, there's stuff going on, and there's no point in going to all these other great exotic places, as great as they are, but it's all on your doorstep if you're willing to be curious and look and engage with people. And it's all about long-term engagement. I've got another 10 years of this, and I'm hoping I've got longer, but while I'm still active and able, I want to just continue doing it. And Chris Killip does say long-term engagement, and I will repeat that, because it is about spending time and building bonding and sharing and talking and learning about people. And you're going to find you're going to get a great body of work if you continue down that path of just reaching out to people and letting them get to trust you. And it's the future.
Great. Thanks so much, George. Thank you.